You know what, Tui? We have spent almost 2 months now talking about the Great Movie Ride, but no one has asked, Matt, what is your Great Movie Ride? What are your favorite movies? If you could redo the Great Movie Ride with your favorite films, what movies would you pick? Okay, no, you're right. A couple people actually have asked me that, and that is what inspired today's video. Whoop. Welcome to Teacup for One. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and welcome back to another Teacup Tag. Now, we did a really fun tag earlier in this year that was all about Disney cats versus Disney dogs, and which ones were better. Now, originally, the Cats vs. Dogs tag was only supposed to last 4 weeks, but I know there were a lot of channels that wanted to participate, so I extended the deadline indefinitely, and so we are still waiting to find out whether the Disney Cats or the Disney Dogs won. And, you know, we kind of had to request a recount or 2 or 10, and we're still waiting on the results from that. But totally unrelated, if any Disney cat people still want to participate in that tag, you know, to get the cats a couple more points, please do it. Link in the description down below. But we're not here to talk about Disney cats versus Disney dogs today. Today we are here with a brand new Teacup Tag, which is inspired by my Great Movie Marathon. Now, if you haven't been following the channel, for the last few weeks, I've been watching my way through all the films that were featured in Disney's Great Movie Ride and doing a video review on each one. Some of my fellow Disney YouTubers have come along for the ride and done videos of their own for different movies, and we've even come together for some live shows where we've discussed the movie, just like book club style. It's been a really fun project, and as we're winding down into the last few weeks of the Great Movie Marathon, I wanted to just reflect on all these great movies. But specifically, I wanted to reflect on a question that's been asked of me a couple times during this project. And that was, Matt, if you could rebuild the Great Movie Ride, what movies would you pick to feature and why? And I thought this question was so exciting because obviously I love movies and I love the Great Movie Ride, but they could only pick 10 to 12 films, and there are so many other amazing movies out there. Plus, you know, Disney was limited by contractual things. They couldn't use any movies from Universal Studios, which is why there's not a proper horror section, and so I just thought it would be fun to create this Great Movie Ride tag. So I have 10 prompts inspired by the genres that are represented in the Great Movie Ride, and for each prompt, I am going to tell you my pick for a favorite film from that genre. And then I'm going to tag some other Disney YouTubers so that I can hear what their answers are, and then we could just kind of armchair Imagineer our own personal Great Movie Rides. So, without further ado, lights, camera, action, let's go. Oh, and before we begin, there's only one rule for this tag, which is that you cannot pick movies that were already in the original Great Movie Ride, with one exception. But we'll get there. Okay, now, lights, camera, action, let's start. Take 2. Okay, prompt number 1, a black and white classic. So, name a movie that is in black and white from a long time ago that in your mind represents the beginning of cinema. In the Great Movie Ride, the very first film they feature is Busby Berkeley's Footlight Parade, but for me, I think you need to look even earlier than that. I think for black and white cinema, you need to pick a really iconic silent film. I was thinking, do I want to go Charlie Chaplin? Do I want to go Buster Keaton? But no. My pick is even earlier. It is Georges Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. It's a silent science fiction film from 1902, and if you haven't heard of it, you probably most definitely would recognize it. It has one of the most iconic images in all of film history, which is the rocket ship being launched into space and landing in the man in the moon's eye. Like, honestly, I just want to see a life-sized animatronic of Georges Méliès's Man in the Moon. It would be like the Eric Idle Man in the Moon from the Figment ride, except less creepy, or maybe more creepy, but like in a good way. And our ride vehicle could even be the rocket that like goes into the Man in the Moon's eye, and that like brings you into the next part of the ride. I don't know how it would work, but it would be super cool. Prompt number 2, movie musicals. So pick a Hollywood movie musical that's big, colorful, flashy, and just for you, represents a big, flashy Hollywood movie musical. Now, this decision was actually a lot harder for me than I expected it to be, and I love movie musicals. You know, they are debatably my favorite film genre probably ever. But at the same time, when I think of my favorite movie musicals, like Chicago, Sound of Music, they aren't necessarily movies that I would pick to represent the entire genre. So I gave it a lot of thought, and since I can't pick the movies that were already featured in the ride, I have landed on Guys and Dolls from 1955. Guys and Dolls is pretty much a perfect movie musical. It's based on one of the greatest Broadway shows of all time. As a film, there's spectacle, the dance numbers are a ton of fun, it has an all-star cast. I mean, Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando? Pfft. Plus, it takes place in New York City in the 1930s, so the time period is kind of in line with what we have with Singin' in the Rain, and it's just an all-around beautiful movie. And I would pick the opening overture sequence to be the part of the movie that's represented in the ride. That's where they're just setting up all the chaos of New York City, but like through musical theater. It's a ton of fun. And I think the other thing that would be cool about having Guys and Dolls as the musical theater choice is that it would kind of bleed, pun intended, effortlessly into prompt number 3. Prompt number 3, the crime film. So this is a movie that features wise guys, gangsters, or takes place in Chicago, because a lot of these movies seem to take place in Chicago. Now, when I think of crime films, I think one of the most iconic and obvious choices would be The Godfather, but I feel like that's not a movie that you could really represent too well in the Great Movie Ride, and so I'm gonna go with a movie that I've never seen but just know by reputation. Bonnie and Clyde. Imagine how much fun it would be to have Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, inspire the hijacker scene. Like, instead of having one hijacker, you could have Bonnie and Clyde literally hijacking your vehicle. Then you're like going for a ride with them through the rest of the Great Movie Ride. And I think that would transition really nicely into the Western scene. Because Bonnie and Clyde, even though it's a crime film, it takes place more in the South. So you get the best of both worlds. Miley Cyrus. So, that's my choice. Crime film, Bonnie and Clyde. Prompt number 4, a Western. So just pick a movie that has a cowboy. It can be a singing cowboy, or a shooting cowboy, or both. And Western isn't a genre that I'm really a fan of or know that much about. In fact, I've really only seen Western movies because of the Great Movie Ride Marathon, but as per my own rules, I can't pick The Searchers, and I can't pick The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So, you know what I am gonna pick? Fistful of Dollars. It's basically The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but like 2 movies earlier. It's part of the same trilogy, it has Clint Eastwood playing the same character, and I'm picking that because the Great Movie Marathon really made me appreciate spaghetti westerns, and Sergio Leone's work in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was so good. And I think that trilogy and that character played by Clint Eastwood, you know, Blondie, Man with No Name, whoever he is, he has been so integral to the creation of the Western genre as we know it today that I think it's kind of important to include him. So, that's my pick. Fistful of Dollars. Another movie I haven't seen, but I'm assuming is good enough to be put in my imaginary Great Movie Ride. Prompt number 5. Scary. Ooh. Now, this is the part of the Great Movie Ride when we would have the alien scene. So, whether it's science fiction or horror, I just want you to name a movie that is gonna scare people. This is the part of the ride that makes people second guess going on the ride. This is the part of the ride that scars children for life and makes them too scared to watch a certain movie until they're like pushing 29 or 30 years old. Not that I speak from experience. It makes no difference. So my pick for this scene is again another movie that I've never seen, but I have my reasons. I am picking The Shining. And I'm picking The Shining because this is the Great Movie Ride. The Shining was directed by Stanley Kubrick, one of the most important filmmakers of all time, and I think his work deserves to be recognized in a celebration of all things great movies. And the nature of The Shining is just so perfect for something like the Great Movie Ride, because just imagine riding through the hallways of that creepy hotel. You go around the corner and you see the creepy twins. You go around another corner and you just hear Jack Nicholson like axing his way through a door yelling, "Here's Johnny!" The opportunities for jump scares and creepy subtle scares and some cool ghost illusions are just endless. I think a tiny Shining portion of the Great Movie Ride would be so cool. Number 6, action adventure. So of course, this is the part of the original Great Movie Ride where we had that Raiders of the Lost Ark scene. So, in the grand tradition of those Saturday matinee serial films, I want you to think of a movie with big costumes, big sets, and big action. For me, I'm going with the 1930s Errol Flynn Adventures of Robin Hood. I want to ride through those medieval castles, but more than that, I want the most state-of-the-art animatronic ever to be of Errol Flynn Robin Hood in the middle of a sword fight. And I'm not talking about one of those Pirates of the Caribbean sword fights that's just like jabbing. No. I want full parry action. I want disarms. I want lunges. Like, this animatronic in my imagination is amazing. Number 7, In the Jungle, or In the Jungle. Now I'm picking this category because, well, this is the part of the original Great Movie Ride where we had the Tarzan scene. But I haven't gotten to the Tarzan episode of the Great Movie Marathon yet, but just, here, spoiler alert, why is there a Tarzan scene in the Great Movie Ride? There are so many great movies that the Imagineers could have picked, and they went for the 1930s Tarzan films. Do you know how difficult it is to even find and watch the 1930s Tarzan films? Answer, extremely. Like, to watch this movie, I would have to buy a DVD off of eBay for upwards of $200, or dig into like the dark depths of the internet to try to find a copy to stream at the risk of virusifying my computer. Like, it just, no. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, I think the Tarzan scene is only in the Great Movie Ride because the Imagineers wanted a jungle scene. So you know what? Just pick a movie that takes place in the jungle. My pick is the Katharine Hepburn Humphrey Bogart film, The African Queen. Yes, it basically already has a ride in the way of the Jungle Cruise, but I don't care. Those are two Hollywood legends, and African Queen is a lot easier to find and watch than Tarzan, and it is actually a really beautiful movie. I recommend everyone take a look. Number 8, romance. So this is going to be a scene that takes the place of the Casablanca scene, where Rick and Ilsa are saying their goodbyes at the plane. Now, I want you to pick a movie that you think is one of the most romantic movies of all time, but a little bit more important than that, think of one of your most iconic on-screen couples, and just a scene or a moment that shows them at their best. My pick is Tony and Maria in West Side Story singing Tonight on the New York City balcony. I think this is one of the most beautiful film visuals of a couple ever. Plus, if you layer in the music and, oh, it would be incredible. I'm excited to see what Spielberg does with it in the remake. And just imagine like a Natalie Wood animatronic going, "Tonight, tonight, it all began." Oh, I couldn't do it, I had to blink. Number 9, Disney animation. This is where we had the Fantasia sequence in the original Great Movie Ride, and it just makes a lot of sense. This is a ride that is celebrating the greatest films of all time, but it's also at Disney World, so you gotta have some Disney representation in there somewhere. And I think animation is especially important because, of course, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first full-length animated feature film ever, Disney contributed a lot to the progression of animation in film history. So my pick is Steamboat Willie. You know, Mickey finally has his own ride in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but I want to see that technology used to bring classic era Mickey to life. Now, am I really just kind of projecting what I was hoping Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway would actually be? And finally, number 10, the greatest great movie. This is the one and only prompt where you can pick a film that was already featured in the original Great Movie Ride, and I kind of made up that rule because I can't think of any better conclusion for the Great Movie Ride than the one that they already had, The Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is my all-time favorite film. I think it is a masterpiece for so many reasons that I'm going to get into when we get to Wizard of Oz week, but I think their treatment of Wizard of Oz in the original Great Movie Ride was perfect. The only thing that could have made it better, which in my ideal imagined Great Movie Ride I'm going to bring back, was if they were able to follow through with their original plans to introduce the Oz scene and to close it out. I believe there were some contractual obligations that said that they could only use a certain amount of time from the movie, like 2 to 4 minutes, so that kind of squashed their original plans. But originally, where the Fantasia scene was, that was supposed to be the tornado. So there was going to be all this wind, and I think they were going to find a way to make you transition from black and white land into color. So I want to see that brought to life. The Wicked Witch animatronic, we're keeping that. It was great. Seeing the Emerald City, keeping that, also great. But something I've read on the web, I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to pretend it is that the original conclusion of the Great Movie Ride was you entering the throne room of the Wizard of Oz. Like, this was the big space where they just let you watch that montage at the end. So instead of the montage, you got to see the wizard's face. And then Toto pulled back the curtain, and the person who was operating the wizard was actually the hijacker who hijacked your vehicle earlier in the ride. Like, I think that's such a fun way to tie everything up together, and that's a great précis or consolidation of the movie's key moments. So there you have it, friends, the Teacup for One Great Movie Ride tag. Now, I know my approach kind of became an actual reimagineering of the attraction and picking movies based around what I think would be the best ride-through experience, but I fully encourage anyone doing this tag to just have fun with it. Make your picks however you want. If you just want to use this as an opportunity to talk about 10 of your favorite movies, go for it. And so to get the tag ball rolling, I am going to tag the following channels to participate. Geek World Order, you've been tagged. Christina Camarada, you have been tagged. Wrestling with Disney, you have been tagged. Ms. Sassy Pants, you have been tagged. Rolling to Orlando, you have been tagged. TPV Misk, you've been tagged. Sidetrack Zach, you've been tagged. Teaching Disney, you've been tagged. And if you're watching this video thinking, well, this looks like fun, I want to participate, consider yourself tagged. I'm going to leave all the prompts in the video description down below in case you do decide you want to participate. And if you end up uploading a video, please somewhere use the hashtag T4, the letter O, GMR. So that's hashtag T4OGMR, or Teacup for One Great Movie Ride, because that's the easiest way for me to just find the tag videos, you know? Once channels start tagging other channels, it gets kind of difficult for me to keep track of, and I create these tags because I just love hearing people's answers, so the hashtag is the easiest way for me to selfishly kind of find them and watch them. So, there we go, friends. The Teacup for One Great Movie Marathon tag is now live. Have fun. And for now, this concludes yet another episode of Teacup for One. Now, let me know in the comment section down below, what is your favorite movie? And if you want to be the first to know when I upload more videos for the Great Movie Marathon, or just when I upload videos in general, I do content about Disney, Shakespeare, Funko Pops, sometimes cats, but you won't know what my latest video is about if you're not subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, you got another chance coming right now. It's super easy. All you have to do is click on my face. Thanks for joining me again today, everyone. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the Teacup for One. That's a wrap.